Press Cowlin. Fan cams. Club news. Transfer news. Match previews. Legend interviews. Spurs winning. Press conferences. Covering everything Tottenham and England.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat podcast. This is another edition of the viewers' questions and comments, and there have been absolutely thousands following Tottenham's 2-1 defeat at St James's Park on Sunday afternoon. Now, we are live on YouTube, live on Facebook and X also, so please do get involved. Give us all of your thoughts and comments. Tell us how you are feeling as a Spurs fan right now. Back with me are two returning guests, channel regular Craig Dearman. Craig, how are you?
I'm all right. I feel a bit better after yesterday. Seen the absolute meltdown on X today. Tried to stay away from it, to be honest. But a lot of overreaction. I think a lot of people not addressing issues that are clearly still there. But everyone's entitled to their opinion, and that's what we're here to discuss tonight, of course.
And back with us, of course, is Celtic fan Ali Ross. Ali, great to have you back with us. How are you?
Good. We beat Rangers on Sunday, so I'm a happy chappy.
Well, it's very mixed in the Tottenham fan base, to say the least, at the moment, Ali. Of course, we're 3 games in. We've won 1, we've drawn 1, we've lost 1. Most would say, including myself, that we should be sitting here with 9 points out of 3 games. I think that we have played well in all 3 games. It's been frustrating because, you know, the stats yesterday on Sunday afternoon, 49 touches in the opposition box, 20 shots, 6 on target, 66% possession. And yes, I have remembered all of that. Ali, what have you made of Tottenham's, before we get to some of the viewers and listeners' comments and questions here, what have you made of Tottenham's opening 3 games under Ange Postecoglou this season?
I just feel that there isn't a good flow at the moment. When you watch football, you can see teams that are, you know, there's no real thought goes into their play. It seems a bit disjointed. There's too much space between the lines. I just feel that it's a bit disjointed at the minute. And that just takes more time to gel, I suppose. You know, if you think, a lot of the Celtic players have been playing this style for the last 7 or 8 years, you know, since Brendan Rodgers was there the first time. It just does take time. It's a hard thing to learn, or everybody would do it. So that's just my feel. The games I've watched has been a bit frustrating for me because you can see the pass and they're not making it. They're not taking the risk. And most fans will probably see that. They'll think, you should have done this or you should have done that. I see that quite a bit in the games. And that's just about not being brave on the ball. And that's nothing to do with Ange. That's the players that. You know, he wants them to make those passes and they're just not wanting to take the risk. That's my opinion.
Ali, there are some fans saying that the board haven't invested enough money or given Ange Postecoglou enough in the transfer window. There are some people now doubting Ange Postecoglou's system, playing such a high line, of course, conceding a lot of goals because that final third is so important. And, you know, since Ange Postecoglou has arrived at Tottenham Hotspur, he has said so often in so many press conferences how wasteful we have been in that final third. And some people are blaming a lot of the players, saying that the players aren't good enough. In your opinion, what do you think the problem is right now? Because I sit here and, you know, I've really enjoyed watching the football under Ange Postecoglou. I've really enjoyed the way that he has transformed the club in the last 12 months. So many players have gone out the door, which is a huge bonus and a huge plus in terms of going forward. But I sit here and think that we should have done a lot more in the transfer window, given him a couple of more experienced players, certainly, because a couple of key injuries, and I think that did show on Sunday, a couple of key injuries to key players, i.e. Solanke, Richarlison unavailable, Van de Ven, probably our best defender in terms of speed as well at the back. You take those players out of the team, we are a very, very different team. So, you know, where people have frustration at the board, at the manager and the players, where do you see the problem at the moment?
Oh, Van de Ven's a big loss, mate. When you lose a player that is probably your main backbone at the back, I think he's absolute quality. You know, it does. I mean, I can go back to when Ange was at Celtic and we had Carter Vickers when he was injured. You know, we lost some games. He came back, we didn't lose a game. You know, that little things can be the thing that makes a difference between winning matches and not. So I don't think the board has spent and got you in all the positions to be strong enough. And I know that doesn't always happen in one window. You know, he's changed the whole team. So, and the problem you're going to have is you're going to have projects like Celtic, because we're not going to spend money like the Chelseas and Man Cities and stuff. That's always going to be thrown at him. But you can only play with what you work with what you've got, you know. So I kind of feel sorry for Ange in a way, because if he's not got the players, it annoys me when I see players jogging back, because for all the lack of quality we might have in Scotland, you'll just don't see that. And it annoys me when you see big players jogging when they need to be sprinting back to stop these challenges and break the space and stuff. So that does bug me in the English Premiership in general. I mean, you see Rashford, he jogs all the time, and then he moans that he's not getting played as the main guy. That's hard for Ange, I think. It needs to gel more. I think the biggest thing you've missed in my as a number 6, someone who's running the tempo of the match. You know, because that's where his style of football, you look at all the teams that play that style, it all comes from that number 6. You know, everything. He's always there. You know, and I mean, you look at Arsenal, for instance, they've got Odegaard and they've got Rice that can do that. I just don't really see anyone in the Spurs team at that level. And if you don't have that, who are the other players following? Because that's the guy that sets the tempo in all the teams that I've seen do it. We've got Callum McGregor that does it very well, but Tottenham should be buying players that are better than that, if you understand what I mean. So I think that's his biggest problem when it comes to that, because you can talk all you like about the strikers, but if that ball's not getting fast enough through to them and they're making runs, you're not going to score goals, you know. And you're playing teams that are sitting back against you now after last season when you've been demolishing them. And you've got to remember, you got beat last game you had at St James's Park, you were beat 4-0. So it's not an easy stadium to go to.
Yeah,
I agree. I think that was a bad game.
Ali, of course, when you've been on here before, you've been extremely calm, extremely measured about Ange Postecoglou's appointment at Spurs. Of course, you've seen him be very, very successful in Scotland at Celtic. What do you make of the way a lot of the fans are feeling right now? Did you have similar in Scotland? Of course, you know, he delivered trophies at the end of each season. What do you make of the negativity around Postecoglou?
Yeah, well, Celtic had a lot of negativity about him in the first 7 games. I think we lost 4 in the first 7 that he played for us. And we still won the league. But it's a bit easier in Scotland, as we all know. But it's a hard league, mate. I mean, Brighton's a decent side, you know, and even the big teams are finding that out. So it's hard to gauge. You know, he needs to be where you would look in the league up here to, you know, catch a team up. You can do it in a season or 2 in Scotland. It's like a 5-year project in England. You know, you need to get all your players in and you need to be upgrading constantly. That's my view, is that he's not had the time. And I think Levy's said that he wants a style, he wants an identity. You need that, but he's had to change all of that. And sometimes I think the expectations are just too much. And I get it. Everyone wants it now. But I think for Ange himself, he needs progression this year. I mean, I did some things there earlier on I was telling Craig about. And to come 4th in the league, you're probably going to need about 72 points. And that's only 6 more than last year. Because it's only once, and it was the year you guys got 77 points and came 3rd in the last 7 years. There's only once that it's been above 72 points. So that's what he's got to aim for. If he doesn't do that, then I could imagine the grumbling getting pretty high, to be fair.
Craig, let's come to you. Of course, we recorded the Spurs Chat podcast straight after the Newcastle game on Sunday. You've had 24 hours or so to think about it, reflect on that game. What have you made of all of the negativity surrounding the players, the transfer window, and Postecoglou?
I've still got the same opinion about the transfer window, as I've said many times on here. And me and Ali spoke earlier. I still think we were 2 or 3 players short this window to push us on, to push us to that next level. It's difficult because I really like Archie Gray and Bergvall and what I've seen of them in pre-season. They haven't had a chance yet, let's be honest. And Archie Gray could be that number 6 that we've been waiting for. He's only, 18, 19, and he's only just joined the team. So I get the meltdown a little bit because I think we've got a bit of that in all of us. But we did dominate. And as somebody said there in the comments earlier, when you win a game and you don't play well, that's a sign of a good team sometimes. But if we're dominating games and not scoring goals and not winning, is that a sign there's something wrong? In my opinion, it is. In our case, we couldn't put the ball in the back of the net again yesterday. We had enough chances to kill that game off again in the first half, which is frustrating. And the period in the second half when we did score, I honestly thought we was going to go on and win it. But in typical football fashion, and it happens, they went down the other end, split us open with one pass, which I'm sure we will cover. Newcastle score, shut up shop, and we just can't get in behind them again. So I'm a little bit concerned, especially with the North London derby coming up. And it doesn't help with this international break being on the next 2 weeks. We could have done with another game straight away to put that right.
What are your main concerns as a Spurs fan right now, Craig?
Putting the ball in the back of the net. But to caveat that, as you said, we're missing Solanke. Richarlison was injured, and the only other recognised striker is Will Lancashire, 19 years old. And he's I don't think has he even played minutes in the first team yet? I know he played in pre-season, so that essentially be his debut. No, so essentially that would be his debut. As good as I think he is and he's going to be, that's a big ask. It's just typical our luck to have our club record signing be out after the first game. So we have to consider that. And I've said on it many times, Heung-min Son is not a number 9. He can do a job, but he's not got that natural instinct. So putting the ball in the net has got to be the main concern.
Craig, I've seen a lot, and I mean a lot, hundreds and thousands of comments today on social media saying, well, it's okay. When Dominic Solanke's back, everything will be fine. Do you have that attitude? Do you agree with that?
I think it'd be better. I think it'll be better to have a proper centre forward there, 100%. I don't think it sorts everything out though, because we still know where the holes are in this squad. We said last night, Mickey van der Ven missing. I said he was the keystone of this team. I think he is. Without Mickey van der Ven, this system, I think, can fall apart at times because we rely on his pace so much. I mean, he'd have caught up that through ball yesterday. No problem at all. He would have caught that up. And he's just such an integral part of this team. I think we lose a massive, massive advantage when he's out. And nobody can replace Mickey van der Ven's pace. And that's our problem. And Romero didn't have a very good game yesterday. He had a bit of an off day. I know he was playing on the other side of the defence, but he didn't play well at all. We know where the holes are. We haven't really got a backup to a doggy. And I still maintain we could have done with some more forward players, a couple of more forward players and a midfielder. But you can't have everything. We can't get it done in one window. So we have to work now what we've got with. What's there. We have to work with what's there. So yeah, I think Ali's right about the points thing. Absolutely, I've heard that before. 72 points should guarantee you fourth, and we weren't that far off it, and we were dreadful back in last season. So I think top 4 is doable. The trouble we've got is people around you when they're getting stronger and building. You know, we're only just keeping up, and we want to get to a point where we're overtaking those teams, and that's where I worry. We always seem to be two or three players short of doing that.
Ali, let's come to you. Let's take one of the comments here from Stuart Dack. The fan base seems very divided. I believe he should be given a chance, but ultimately I think he will foul because of his lack of defensive knowledge. Now, I just wanted to show you this picture here. This is the through ball for Newcastle's second goal. The high line that has been spoken about so much since Ange Postecoglou's arrival at Tottenham Hotspur. What do you make of the way that Ange Postecoglou sets up his teams defensively, particularly now in the Premier League managing Spurs, Ali?
Well, you've got that there to me is people. One guy's trying to play the offside, and the others are already running to put them onside. You know, if they're all stepped out at the same time as your one in the middle, I'm not sure who that is, but then he'd have been offside. So I can't. You can't blame Ange for players not being able to do game management. That's basic football. If you understand what I mean, that's decision making on the pitch. That you can't. That's not about coaching. That's about people having bloody common sense to me. You know, I can't see how that's Ange's fault. And I just can't. I get how people say he's not defensive. You know, we all know that style of football you defend as a team. How's he even getting to pass that ball? You know, it's too many players are playing out of position. They're not playing where they should be playing within the system at times. And you can see it a lot of the time where, you know, not all of them should be running. It's not all charge, if you know what I mean. There is, when we had it working right at Celtic, you know, McGregor would sit back or Riley would sit back. There's always someone there to make sure you're defending, you know, and you can't all just go forward. You know, your wing backs, both your right and left back, don't both go at the same time, for instance. You know, everyone knows the system. You know, you defender passes it, you know, the wing backs come in, the wingers go out, guy comes into the middle, cross, goal, that kind of attitude. The system isn't that hard to work out. It's just the players need to manage it on the pitch. And that's why I think a number 6 is important, because he's the one that does the whole game management. And it happens in most of the big teams. You know, your number 6 is the one. You know, you could go back to Man United with Roy Keane. He used to manage the games. Paul Scholes. You know, I don't see how that's Ange's fault. I just don't. And if he's not got the quality that other teams have, and if he's not got the money to buy a top-class striker, again, what's he meant to do? You know, like you say, your striker's got injured. One striker's not enough anyway, as this has proved. And they must have known that going in. But I can only suggest that Levy's sitting there saying, and they've got a 3 to 5 year plan on it. And they're hoping to improve each year. And look, a successful year, and I looked at the Europa League this year, and I'm glad you got Rangers, because you'll get a good 9-goal lead there, I think. I think winning the Europa League, and if you can get 10, I'll tell you, I'll be ecstatic. Winning the Europa League and coming fourth would be a great season. And you got to remember, there's no drop downs from the Champions League this year. Nobody comes down, so they've got a decent chance in that competition.
The thing is, though, Ali, the way that I see it, and this isn't me being negative, to fight on all 4 fronts, the League Cup, the FA Cup, the Premier League, and of course now the Europa League, we're going to have so many more games than last season. Do you think that we have got enough in terms of squad depth? Because we are only 3 games in. And as I say, I don't want to be negative, and I don't want this to be a negative stream by a long shot. But we're only 3 games in. We have a couple of injuries, and already we are seeing, you know, because 20 minutes to go in that Newcastle game yesterday, I'm looking at the bench thinking, right, where's the game changers? In terms of that final third, where are the game changers? Brennan Johnson came on at half-time, which we'll talk about in a second. I thought he'd done extremely well off the bench. Sure. But 20 minutes to go, the only option really that Ange Postecoglou can change or bring someone on with fresh legs was Timo Werner. And for me, I don't think that Timo Werner is good enough to be playing in a team in this system and the way that we want to perform and assists and goals. I don't think he is going to deliver that. And I've said on many podcasts before, in that final third, and I quote Ange again, you know, how many times has he said about being wasteful in that final third? You know, with Richarlison, with Timo Werner, with Brennan Johnson, the decision-making needs to be a lot better. And that's why I brought up the point about the defending as well, because if you're going to defend like that and play high-risk football, you know, me and Craig spoke earlier about, you know, the rewards at the other end. if you're not getting those rewards at the other end, then of course the defensive part of the game is going to matter hugely. I get that Ange Postecoglou sets Spurs up in the way that it doesn't matter if we concede a couple of goals because we'll score more. I kind of like that attitude in a way, but sometimes when they're not firing up one end, then something does need to change at the other end because, you know, for Spurs not to get anything out of that game at St James's Park on Sunday was truly gutting for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I do disagree, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I think he doesn't set up to allow his teams to concede. He doesn't want to concede any goals. That comes down to game management again, and they're just not very good at that at the moment. I think the midfield can be a bit ponderous sometimes. Getting the ball forward doesn't help the forward players. You've got a bit of pace there. Why not use it? You know, there's no point in passing the ball to someone if he's got the back to goal because then they've got to take players on. You know, there's plenty of space, even although it was tight up the pitch. You know, there's not enough triangles getting done. I can give you a list that it didn't look like an Ange team to me at Newcastle. And that I can only put down to the players not taking his instructions because he never changes. So I get what you're saying, mate. And, you know, you were saying you don't want to be on a downer about things. I mean, I would probably go along the lines of saying if you wanted to be pragmatic, what would be progression for Spurs this year? And
I've already said, Ali, I don't think we've done enough in the transfer window, but I do question if Ange Postecoglou is sitting there saying that he is happy with the transfer window, he is happy with those players that he has brought in, then, you know, some people are scratching their head thinking, really? You didn't want anyone else in this transfer window?
At least he didn't say he didn't have a magic wand, mate. Like what they're all saying over in Manchester. But I didn't hear that comment, to be fair. He's maybe playing to he tends to get on well with CEO and stuff, so he needs him to give him what he needs. He needs to sing the party line, I suppose. But if he thinks he's got a good team, then I'm not there to argue about him, mate. He is a winner, whether we like it or not. And I know you're always going to get questions on any manager that comes in and say, well, he's got to do it in the Premier League. We're the best league in the world. You know, I would say you're the most competitive league in the world, without a doubt, because there's so many teams at that level, if you understand what I mean. Whereas, and spending that kind of money, you know, whereas most other leagues have got one or two that can do it. You know, there's probably 6 in the English Premiership that could challenge just with a bit more of a push. I still think that it's early doors, mate. I think he's. I don't think he's had a great transfer window. I think you're right. I'm not going to deny that, and I can't defend what Spurs were thinking by not giving him, after the way he's played last year and start of the season, why they never took a punt and said, right, let's go and spend an extra bit this year, you know, and move a year ahead of ourselves. Because to me, to progress, what they needed to deliver for Ange to be able to deliver for the team is Champions League football. Now, they might think that, do you know what, we reckon we'll get 72 points with what we've got. If that's what they're doing, then to me, they're not pushing the boat out enough. You know, I would want a team now, for you to have a chance of then challenging the top guys, you need to be getting close to 80 points, if you know what I mean. And then you can push on, because you're not pushing on from 65, 70 points, you know.
Ali, when I returned home from St James's Park late last night, the first thing I did, I don't know why, I switched on Match of the Day, watched the game, and their analysis of the back four. Newcastle were on the attack, and the back four were all over the place.
Yeah.
And the analysts and the pundits there said, you know, why are they so apart? You know, they weren't compact, they weren't together, they weren't even in the same line. Do you worry about Spurs defensively?
I think you have to. You know, conceding that goal was criminal, you know, and it's not enough. Spurs aren't there yet where they can afford to think that if they lose a goal, they're going to score 3, because they're not putting the ball in the back of the net at the other end. You know, if you guys had won that 4-2, for instance, then nobody would be talking about the defence, because that's how he sets up. So you go back to Solanke not playing. You can go back to not buying a number 6. You know, not backing him up enough in the thing. You can talk about Timo Werner. I like Timo Werner. I think he's a decent player. Whether he'll do it will depend on how his bond with Ange is, and if Ange can make him step up to the plate, really.
Based on what?
Based on what? That Timo Werner's a good player?
Yeah.
I just think that he's...
In a Spurs shirt you're talking about?
No, I've not watched him enough in Spurs shirt.
Okay.
I'm talking as a player in general. I think he would fit that model, in my view, because he does a lot of running. He does a lot of off-the-ball stuff, does a lot of pressing, and it needs a player like that. Me and Craig spoke about it earlier. We've got Dazen Maeda at Celtic, and he's although he scored at the weekend, it's frustrating the amount of chances he gets and doesn't score. But the amount of work he puts in makes the rest of it kind of sets the tempo. And Ange might have been thinking, I'll bring him in to do that. I don't know. I think he's a decent enough player.
Craig, let's come to you. Red Kite 72 says here, good evening, guys. Great to see Ali Roth on again. And obviously, Sir Chris and Craig. Is Romero as great as we all say he is? Because, of course, last week against Everton, we saw Mickey van der Ven surging forward and giving that great assist for Heung-min Son. Christian Romero tried to do exactly the same thing at St James's Park, and that is ultimately why we conceded that first goal.
Yeah. He's. I've said I don't think he is. I know Messi thinks he's the best centre back in the world. Who am I to argue with Lionel Messi? But he goes missing in some games. He goes wandering, as we saw yesterday. In fact, what game was it? Was it the Leicester game? Yeah, I think it was the Leicester game. He just ran past Jamie Vardy when he could have just stood his ground and headed the ball away. It was like he switched off, and he switched off a couple of times yesterday. I'm not saying he's a bad player at all. I think he's a great defender, but he's prone to moments of, well, we know he's prone to moments of madness, but he should be the leader and the commander back there in that defence. He's one of the vice captains, so he's the one that should be leading by example. And I just think we're wide open. He worries me. He does worry me, Romero. And sometimes I think it's actually Romero out of Van der Ven or Romero. I think it's more Romero that might lose his place to Dragic. Out of the two, because I think Mickey van der Ven, if he's fit, he's playing. He's playing every week, or certainly when we need him. I expect him to perhaps sit out a couple of Europa League games, perhaps Carabao Cup, but you can't drop Mickey van der Ven where I think you could quite easily drop Christian Romero.
Craig, do you get all the criticism of the defending, the attacking? A lot of us saying about we need a number 6. Now there's a lot of criticism about Ange Postecoglou, criticism about not done enough in the transfer window. Jonesy writes here, we're too open. The high line and lack of depth defensively is a worry. A couple of injuries will cost us. Can you believe there is so much negativity, I suppose is the right word, or questioning just 3 games into the Premier League season?
It doesn't surprise me, because I think Spurs fans, I think we've all had so many years of mediocrity, and I think we all believed, and at the time I thought we had a pretty decent transfer window. Again, a few short. I'm sure everybody, I don't know anybody that thought we've done enough in this transfer window. But I think we could see in the pre-season, we was quite excited by what we were seeing. But it is early. It is early in the season. As Ali hinted, Manchester United haven't exactly started well. Their fans are in utter meltdown. Yeah, I'm sure other teams' fans are as well that have lost a game or drawn a couple of games. So we're not the only ones. We're not Manchester City. We're not Liverpool. I think Liverpool fans are probably more surprised that they've started off so well, to be honest, because replacing Jurgen Klopp, and it doesn't seem to have affected them at all. And they didn't have a very good transfer window for bringing in players at all.
Still Klopp's team, though, isn't it? They didn't have many changes and integrations to make, so he just had to make a few tactical changes, which I'm not saying I couldn't go and do it. I mean, he's a decent manager, this guy, obviously, but it'll be interesting to see what happens when he loses. They were talking today about the people that have got a year left. Virgil van Dijk, Salah, I think Robertson's another one, and there's another one in there as well. It's quite a big player.
Trent, I think. Trent
Alexander, that was it. Yeah. So they start losing players like that, then they're going to have to do what Tottenham are trying to do, is bring in that quality that'll take you to the next level. And it's not so easy to do that when they're playing for that type of quality teams already. So you end up going for players that you hope will fit in and hit the ground running. I think Romero's a good player. I like Dragusin as well, to be fair. I think he's a decent player. He's certainly good in the air. So I don't think he's done bad there. I just feel it's the number 6 position that's so pivotal to the whole process of the game and the playing of the game and the tempo of the game. I just worry that they need to find somebody that can do that. Now, don't worry, I think Maddison could probably do it because he's got that technical ability and that doggedness about him. But you kind of need 2 in there that can complement each other, and I don't see 2 of them complementing each other enough and working off each other enough. That would be my worry. And when you've got a flat, we never had it where we had 4 guys flat. It was more like a semicircle. Your wingers would always push a bit more up and your defenders would sit back a wee bit. We're then pushing 2 up front.
Craig, are you there?
I am, yeah. I thought you were frozen.
Let's go to a question here or a comment from MEBD 2011. A lot of our supporters need to calm down and keep the faith. I think that a lot of people, having witnessed the amount of injuries, suspensions, and other problems that we had last year, 3 games in, Mickey van der Ven out, Richarlison out, Dominic Solanke out. When we've seen that last year, I think a lot of us are thinking this is going to happen again. And when you're playing all those extra games, Thursday, Sunday, and of course, we all want us to go far in the League Cup as well, FA Cup. Do you think that we've got enough depth? Because Ange has come out and said that Mickey van der Ven has got to rotate. We're not going to be using the same players, for every single match. But of course, we need to get over the line in some of these games. People are talking about winning trophies and going top 4. I tell you, there's a long way to go. Do you think we've got enough depth for that?
No, that's right. And I mean, obviously, look, Premiership squad is 25 people, 25 guys. The under 21s don't have to be on that list. So as far as that goes, if you're talking about bodies and people, yeah, we've got enough players, but have we got enough? What you're asking is obviously, have we got good enough backup options and almost second string, if you like, to either dig us out of holes, bring off the bench as game changers if needed, or to give the first choice players a rest. And of course, Ange doesn't like that. He doesn't like first choice. He'd like a squad of 25 players where he can rotate like Manchester City, and you don't really notice any difference. When De Bruyne is out, for example, I think Haaland's a bit different. I think Haaland's a bit phenomenal. I don't think you can replace him with anyone. But pretty much throughout the team, the Manchester City team, they've got 2 very, very good first starting 11s that could give anybody a game on the day. We haven't got that. We're nowhere near that. We're absolutely nowhere near that. So that's why I said there's still work to be done in transfer windows. It's going to take at least another 2-3 windows for me for us to be even thinking about breaking into the top 2. And that's just being realistic. Well, actually, if Ali's back now, I wanted to ask Ali a quick question. our next game is the North London derby, as you probably know, at Tottenham. It's at home. Obviously, a lot of fans are worried about this fixture and think that if we were to lose it, then Ange's really up against it. Would he have got that same treatment, that same worry at Celtic, had Celtic lost to Rangers in the Old Firm?
Yeah, if Rangers were pressing for the title, then that's massive. You know, it's like Celtic and Rangers games, it's like you're just that one game away from a disaster. And I'm assuming it's the same with you guys. So I don't think you can put every game the same. You know, Everton are pretty rubbish. I would have looked at your first 3 fixtures thinking you get 9 points, possibly 7 because Newcastle are good at home.
Yeah.
They beat you 4-0 last time. And I maybe put all that together and thought, do you know what, 7 would have been a decent result. Getting beat, I get why. The draw, I think, at Leicester was probably a bad start. It takes the momentum away a bit after having a decent pre-season. People start to doubt. The worst thing you can have in this system is have any doubt. You've got to be confident it works. You know, and if the fans and if that all comes in together and the pressure's on the players and there's that doubt there, they're going to doubt themselves with their passes, and they can't have that if they're playing this system. So it needs strong characters, and I just don't know if Tottenham have got enough of them. That would be my call. Arsenal will be a different game, mate. It'll be a more open game. You'll have more space to play into. You know, your main players like Son and that are going to have to step up. You know yourself, derbies are about the players that step up to the plate. You know, these guys are going to have to step up, your front guys, and they're going to have to put the ball in the back of the net. That's the bottom line. You know, it's not a case of, you know, these are the problems we've got. You can't look at your problems. You need to look at, right, what have we got and how do we overcome the next challenge? And the next challenge is going to be playing possibly, well, certainly one of the top 2 teams in the league at the minute. You know, and they're not having a great time. You know, Brighton, to be fair, I don't think Rice should have been sent off, which changed the game probably a bit for them, but that'll be him out of your game, is it not?
There's no easy game, though, in the Premier League.
Every silver line in it.
Yeah, there's no easy game in the Premier League, though, Ali, is there? Home or away?
No, I agree with you. What we don't get, and where we struggle in Europe, is that, you know, we're not getting that challenge every week. You know, so,
yeah.
You know, what would be cheeky, you put Celtic and Rangers into the league just now with the teams we've got. Certainly not Rangers, because they've really dropped even from 2 or 3 years ago. But we'd manage in that league because we're better than quite a lot of teams in there, even with the team we've got now, even with the funding we've got. But then we'd have to do what you guys are doing now. We'd have to build over 5 years to try and get a team that can compete with the big boys, and we'd have to spend a lot of money to do that. And that's what it comes down to. If you want the quality, you need to spend the money, but money doesn't always buy it. You look at Chelsea and, you know, there's been other teams that have tried it. Man United have spent fortunes. You know, Liverpool, you know, they've not been on it for the last few years, even under Klopp, really, when you think about it. You know, and they can blame injuries, but I'm not being funny with you. Everyone gets injuries.
Yeah.
You know, that's because you didn't have a big enough squad or a strong enough squad or a fit enough squad or a young enough squad. I don't know. You can't blame it just always on, oh, we had injuries and stuff. You know, at the end of the day, your squad has got to be there. Like Craig says, you know, De Bruyne gets injured. There's still not a problem for Man City, is it?
Yeah.
You know, and even when you had Haaland out, you know, they're still banging the goals in. You know, so to me, Man City find a way to win, and it's a mentality as well. And this is what I meant about momentum. You were doing well, and then that takes the momentum out, sting out of it, because it's similar when you won your first 10 games last year or undefeated, then that gives you momentum. But then when you get that first loss, it's amazing how many times you then lose games. And it happens to every team. It's not just Spurs. You know, it's call it a phenomenon, call you what you want. It is about confidence, this game. And if these players are going out not confident to make a pass, maybe that's why I'm seeing it as a bit disjointed, because they're a bit too afraid to make that pass in case they look stupid or whatever. I don't know.
Ali, what do you make of everyone criticising Ange Postecoglou, his system, and, you know, to quote a lot of people online and in this stream and a lot of the comments that we've received saying that he has got no plan B? Because I think it is fair to say, and I said this on the podcast after the Everton game, after the Newcastle game on Sunday, that the Leicester game, we had so many chances, and you know, everyone in the final third, they missed those opportunities. Of course, we put 4 past Everton, a comfortable win at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Newcastle to have 20 shots, 6 on target, all of those touches in the opposition box, etc., all of that possession. I feel that we should have done so much better in the final third. So essentially, Ange Postecoglou has done his job, and even Brennan Johnson, when he came on in the 45th minute, I think that he had a good second half for Spurs. And I mentioned this on the podcast on Sunday as well after the Newcastle game. The players are being trained to constantly be hitting that 6-yard box by crossing the ball in. Brennan Johnson did this. Heung-min Son done it in the first half. No one there. Of course, some people could say, oh, it's okay. When our strikers are coming back, you know, they'll be there to tap in. But any professional footballer, you know, whether they're, you know, playing that position for the first time, the second time, the 20th time, you know, Kulusevski, yes, he's a winger, but he was playing through the centre. They should be there to finish. You know, you cannot blame Ange Postecoglou for that.
Look, we used to complain about him only having plan A, but when you watch his coaching sessions, I don't know if you've had him where he's mic'd up. He was mic'd up at Celtic a few times, and it's about trusting the process, you know. And the game becomes quite simple if you're playing the same style, and that's what Pep does, to be honest with you. And nobody moans about his style, you know, just because his is better oiled and he's spent the seasons getting the team together that can play that system. There's 2 differences there. You know, Ange is building a team to play that system. You know, he built his, and to be fair, his team was a pretty decent team when he took it over. So I would argue that people can talk about systems all you like. If you don't have the players to play it, then it becomes hard. But then what do? Do you go back to the way of bringing in managers and playing 5 different systems over the last 10 years? You know, and then you've got no identity. You know, you've got to, you know, as I said to Craig, you know, I went through your guys' points over the last 7 years, and there's about 10 points in it, if you know what I mean, from all these managers, even Poch. You know, so I don't know what you really want. You know, either going to get an identity and try and build this team over the next 5 years and stick with the man, because at least he knows how to play that system. There's a lot of managers can't do it. You know, Eddie Howe's, you know, likes to play attacking football. He's not got the team to do that now. So he frustrates teams because he has got good players. You know, so everyone in the Premier League's got good players. If they want to frustrate you, they're just doing their job. So it's hard. I get why people say it, though, 100%, because we constantly said in Europe, mate, you need to be a bit more pragmatic, and he just isn't. And I love the man for it, but it is frustrating as a fan sometimes when you think, do you know what, we could have got something out of that, you know, and we just don't. But to me, a lot of that's down to the players' game management, because as we developed as a team at Celtic, our game management kept getting better. And once you get that, then to me, that's when you see the whole system work. If you understand what I mean? You know, once they start gelling and all the bits fit and they've got the right players in the places, it's a joy to watch. But it just takes one person to slow the play down, out of position, like you saw your defenders. It just takes that, because it's so fast paced, you know, and all the players are all trying to get into the positions they need to be in. I just think that.
Can I ask you, during Ange Postecoglou's time at Celtic, what was he most criticised for during his time there?
Probably in the Champions League, not scoring goals after chances, a bit like yourselves. So that would be a worry. Because, I mean, I'll tell you about the Real Madrid game. I mean, we had plenty of chances in that game before they went. It was 65 minutes, I think. I think we'd had something like 13 shots on goal. And they'd only had something like 6 or something. I can't remember what the stats were, but certainly we played really well in the first 65 minutes, and then the floodgates opened. They beat us 4-0, I think it was. So I would say that you're 100% right, and everyone's going to identify defensive frailties when you get a game like last weekend, and also your attacking prowess, because the game plan just didn't work. And whether you put that down to Ange's coaching, I would suggest it's probably a bit of a combination between that, the ability of the players, and the players not doing their job. You know, You spoke about Romero, Craig, losing concentration. You can't do that when you're at this level.
Yeah.
It just takes that you get punished in the Premiership. That's the biggest thing about the Premiership. I was watching a podcast the other day, a guy that came up, I can't remember who it was, and he said just the difference of the passing of a ball in the Premiership compared to even the Championship. It's just ping, bang, 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 and it's all so accurate. Whereas that's the pace Ange is trying to do, if you know what I mean. And he's maybe trying to do it with players that just can't do it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So you can only coach that into them. And you're not going to learn that overnight. So I can understand. You're right with everything you say, mate. There is no answer because he's not going to change. So your choices end up, what is it you want? Point out somebody out there that can come in, play that style of football because that's what you want.
Yeah.
And do a better job than Ange Postecoglou. That isn't already Pep Guardiola.
Craig, let's come to you on this because someone wrote in the comments earlier about what do you want to do? Go back to Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte rather than playing entertaining football under Ange Postecoglou. But we've spoken about the 3 games so far. We've had a number of chances in all 3 games. Didn't get the result at Leicester that we wanted to win. Didn't obviously get the result at Newcastle. But everything defensively is going to be looked at, in great detail, isn't it? When the players in the final third are not getting the job done.
Yeah, it is absolutely. I do come back to what I've said before in that the midfield needs to be protecting the defence. No team is ever going to not concede goals. We are, the formation we play and the way we play, we are going to concede goals, 100%. It's just limiting those chances. And yesterday's Newcastle second goal certainly was so unavoidable. Even the first one was avoidable, but the second one, it just split us open completely.
Football's about goals. You've only lost 3 goals in 3 games. I get it was a bad mistake, but I think there's a bit of an overreaction to it's not like the floodgates are opening and you're getting beat 4-0 like you did the last time with Newcastle. It's not that bad.
It's still a defeat though, Ali, isn't it?
The defeat's what hurts, I get that. But I think the focus on the defence, I remember, I think we lost 19 goals in a season and they were moaning about his defence, because we were losing silly goals and it cost us points. But at the end of the day, it's, like I said to you, it's what you wish for. I don't see anybody out there that's coming along. Ten Hag wouldn't make your team better. There's no manager out there that I can see. You've tried Conte, he's a good manager. You've tried Mourinho, he's a good manager, or was. Who'd you bring in that could make that difference? Jurgen Klopp, he couldn't even make Tottenham better if he wasn't given the players. So I think he's an off-base guy that's going to make a difference. I think he'll improve Tottenham no matter what. That's my final on that. I think he will definitely improve Tottenham. He'll get them up that table. I think this is a blip. I think he needs. I think Craig's 100% right. I think he needs about another 3 windows to get possibly closer to the final article that he wants. And that's all I could say about that. I just think that's where he's at now. It's hard.
Ali, let's stay with you. Matthew Ball writes here, Ange just signed glorified Celtic players. That is a huge issue. And Carl Hussey writes here, I'm surprised that Ange hasn't raided Celtic for some of his old players. They know his system. What would you say to that?
I was surprised he maybe didn't come in for Furuhashi, to be fair, because they balls got into the box. He's the best player I've seen at Celtic Park since Henrik Larsson doing that. He's just movement off the ball is superb. So I am surprised he's not come in for him. But he's maybe been told he's not for sale because Celtic have got plenty of money in the bank. Don't want to lose him. Furuhashi might be happy there. I can't answer that. He wasn't going to get Callum McGregor. I don't think any of the rest really are good enough, to be honest with you. There's players there that possibly could, but to improve your team, you're only really looking at Furuhashi. You'd have got probably Maeda for 10 million, to be fair. But he doesn't score goals, but he runs and he makes a difference. He harries everyone, he sets the press. But he hasn't signed glorified Celtic players. He's signed Some of the problem he's got is he's signing Europa League level players and not Champions League players. That's my opinion, because he's playing in the Europa League. You're not in the market of the Champions League players at the minute. You need to get there this year, so that the next window, he needs to almost do what kind of Ten Hag's doing, and what Brendan Rodgers is doing at Celtic now. We spent 11 million on Arne Engels. That's 11 million for us. That's huge. And that's just down to the fact that he wants quality over quantity now. And I think that's what Ange needed to replace a lot of players. Then he needed to upgrade the quality he's got, because he had to sign so many players. He didn't have the money to do it. And he needed more players rather than quality. That would be my suggestion on it, because what does he do? Right, I need to swap 14 players when I've lost Harry Kane. Right, let's go and buy in 3 really good players. Then I'm playing youngsters. He had to bring in a budget, and budget is money. So you'd have had a budget. There's your budget. Right, these are the players we can get for it. And now he needs to get another upgrade this year, or in the winter window, and hopefully into the Champions League, so that you can have an even better window next year, where you've maybe got 2 game changers on it, whether it be up front or number 6 or whatever. You saw what Arteta did. Bringing in Rice was probably what's changed their team a lot. They wouldn't be as good as they are now without him. So, but that cost £100 million. If Ange had bought him, that would have been his budget, mate. It's simple as that. So he needed more than that, and he knows it, and so do you guys. So you've already mentioned it. So yeah, I don't think he's back. I don't think he's choosing to go in and buy that quality. I think he's got no choice between players either wanting to come to him or the budget he's got to spend.
Craig, looking at social media today, there has been a lot of negativity and criticism of Ange Postecoglou. Some people are even talking about, Spurs appointing a new manager and the board offloading Postecoglou. These aren't my thoughts, by the way. This is what I've been reading, and of course, we take notice of a lot of the comments on this channel and on social media alike. Craig, how much time do you think that Postecoglou, or how much patience, should I say, do you think that Postecoglou would actually get from the club?
I just can't believe that anybody would want Postecoglou out. Who are you going to bring in, and where does that leave us if the club sack him? Seriously, what it'll be another rebuild under another manager? Get real, seriously. Why are you even thinking that? Oh my God, I can't even believe people are saying that. The thing is, you're only sort of, who has it said that you're 3 defeats away from a sack? Somebody once said that. So, if we lost the next 3 games, then questions will start to be asked of him. And our chairman he's not shy of pulling the trigger on things like this. So that's the only thing that I would be concerned about. I just hope they stick with him. I hope they give him till at least the end of the season to see where we are. I mean, that's not me saying I want him sacked. I want him to succeed, completely succeed. But if things aren't working out, then obviously something has got to change. But it's certainly not now, and it's certainly not within the next few months. But that's what people are going to see. Football is a results business. It is a cliche, but it is a results business. I'm sure we will win games quite comfortably this season, but we'll have disastrous games still, because as Ali says, he hasn't got fully this squad and the players doing what he needs them to do and being able to understand and actually play this system. You see how many players went out this window. There must be 10 players we got rid of, 11 players. So we're getting there, and it's so difficult to remain patient, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Yesterday's game was frustrating. That was the key word of the podcast yesterday. Frustrating. Don't know how many times I used it, but
yeah.
The only thing
I'll give one to you guys and all the Spurs fans. If you were to bring in another manager, it's more likely he's going to be pragmatic, like what Arsenal did for years, and just aim for the top 4. If you're happy with that, then that's probably what you'll get next. Whereas with Ange, you've got a manager that wants to win the league. Now, I'm not saying he's going to win the league or he can win the league. What I'm saying is he's no there to come in the top 4. That is a fact. That I can guarantee you. But yeah, any other manager that comes in would just do enough of a job to get into the top 4 to save their own bacon. He doesn't give a shit about that.
The problem is, though, Ali, is Ange has said so many times that he is not interested in 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd. He wants to be number 1. You're absolutely right. He wants to win the league. He wants to be number 1. But when you look at the squad that we've got and look at the squad depth, there's no way we're winning the Premier League.
But that's not Ange that's created that, mate, is it? It's years of mismanagement. And it's now down to the fact that he's, like you just said, he's just got rid of 10 players this year. How many was it last year? Same number? Probably more.
Oh, is it? It's been a dramatic turnaround in players, but when
given time, then if you're going to give him,
when the players and the manager are coming out and saying that we want to be successful, we want to win trophies, we want to be number 1, I think it gives some of the fans a sort of sense of hope that we are going to go big in the transfer window. A lot of people have said about Eze. Spurs fans would have loved to have brought Eze in.
Yeah, no, he was another miss, I think. But look, all Ange can do as a manager, he can't dictate who all comes into the club. That's the finances and the board. What Ange is saying is that I'm building a team that are going to be winners. They're going to have a winning mentality. You're not going to win any leagues without a winning mentality, right? And that's a fact. You're just not. So he's bringing in players that are going to have a winning mentality, and they're going to go out to win every game. Right? There's none of this. Right, guys, we're going to sit back, we're going to defend, we'll beat them on the counter. There's none of that, right? So it's pretty clear to these players, if anyone that comes to Spurs, they're there to win every game. And that's it. And I'm not saying that you're never going to win every game. Man City don't win every game. But he's going to bring that mentality to the club. What I'm saying is you bring somebody else in, you're not going to have that same kind of mentality from another manager.
Yeah.
I very much doubt you would. So all I'm saying is that anyone that's doubting him just now, I understand it 100%, but he can't possibly win the league this year with the money spent and the players he's changed. So it's about expectation now. It's about, look, guys, and that's why I keep coming back and saying, can we win this? Well, look, the Europa League isn't the hardest competition in the world to win. Not now that your Champions League teams don't come down, if you understand what I mean. So that is a strong possibility this year. Whether he will or not is another matter. I mean, your Feyenoords and that can go on to win it. Atlanta, teams like that. So there's no reason why a Spurs can't go and win it. And then it's getting into the top 4. Can they do that? I mean, I look at the teams that are still there in the league, round about them now, even after you drop in, you're only on 4 points. You're only really talking probably Brighton won't be there above them at the end. They're a good side, but they've not got the squad either. Aston Villa, are they going to do as well as last year? I have my fucking doubts. We'll pump them in the Champions League. Tongue in cheek, he says, but I just think that you've still got a good chance coming forth, even with the problems you've got, because you had a shit part at the end of last season and you were only a point off. You know, so I can't see. I think Chelsea will have a better season, but are they really going to be getting above you guys? Probably not.
Craig, let's come to you on Liam's point here. He writes this on X, so thanks for your comment, Liam. Evening, gents, great show. What is our confidence in getting a point against Arsenal and beating Coventry in the League Cup? We don't have the depth. Just before I do, I just want to take Graham's comments here. From Aussie, you bloody pommies, you are so toxic, you don't deserve Ange. Graham, I don't know what you think you've heard. We're all behind Ange Postecoglou. Of course, Ali is a big fan of Ange. He won many trophies at Celtic. Craig sings the praises of Ange Postecoglou every single time on this show, and so do I. We all want Ange Postecoglou to be successful because, let's face it, we've had 7 managers, including, from Pochettino right now through to Postecoglou, 7 different managers in the dugout since 2019. We can't go through another rebuild again. I want this desperately to work for Ange Postecoglou. I just hope that he gets backed in every single window to drive the club forward and obviously play Champions League and hopefully put trophies in the cabinet because, let's face it, all of us fans deserve it because we haven't won one in so long. Craig, let's go back to Liam's comment about the Arsenal game, Coventry game, because, that Coventry away game in the League Cup, I feel it's absolutely huge as well, because people have big expectations, especially after going out of the League Cup in August last year against Fulham when Ange made all those changes.
Yeah, it's a huge game. When does that fall, Chris? Is it after the Arsenal fixture?
Yeah.
It's in September. Yeah. So yes, I mean, we all hope he takes it seriously, but I think we was all surprised that he made 10 changes last year. That was a kick in the nuts to go out of that competition so early, because I think it's one we are more than capable of winning. But I think it's imperative, actually, we get past Coventry. I really do. I think in many ways that game's bigger than the Arsenal fixture. I know that sounds daft to say that, but it does show intent if we go out and put a strong team out against Coventry and get through comfortably. I don't.
Craig, sorry to interrupt. I've got to say this because it is about team selection. I just believe that games like this can be extremely tricky, as we have seen in previous years under various different managers, tricky cup ties, especially away from home. It's so important, isn't it, to get this job done and go through to the next round and get a cup run going and hopefully put a trophy in the cabinet along the way as well under Postecoglou. But it's important. We've got to go strong. How do we go strong in every single game when we haven't got that depth?
Absolutely. I think we're in a better position strength-wise than we were when Ange took over. I'll say that, but we're nowhere near there yet. And look, he's going to go full strength against Arsenal, 100%. He will do. He's not going to rest any players because of Coventry. We know that. And quite rightly, you need to go again. We need to have all our best players on the pitch against Arsenal playing at 100% of their ability. And I know it's sad, it's really hard for me to say as a Tottenham fan, but that's the only way we're going to be able to beat them, is if everybody performs on the day.
So then, if you've got a player then, Craig, or a few players that have got niggling injuries after the Arsenal game, do you play them and risk them in Coventry and then be out the next Premiership game, or do you have to put someone in his place, because that's what the squad's there for? You know, I think that he's got to be pragmatic about it as well. Like you said last year, he probably didn't have any choice. He needed to give players a rest because of the 100 mile an hour that he's played. There's players this year will be more used to that pace, you know, and he's brought a bit more youth in as well, which will help. So I think you'll put out a stronger team. I'm not so sure you'll put out your A team if there's players that need a rest for any given reason. And I think that's just managing your team. Like, he's got no choice. You know, and like you say, until he's got a bigger squad, you know, I mean, you know, Man City didn't. How many teams have won 4 trophies in a season? You know, it's not like you can pick and choose your trophies to play for either. But I would say you've probably got more chance of winning the Europa League than you have winning the FA Cup. And that might be a bold statement, but you've got Man City, Liverpool, and Arsenal to get past in the FA Cup. You don't have any of them in the Europa League. So that's why I brought up the Europa League and all that. But think of the trips that the Spurs fans will have. If I was a Spurs fan now, I'd be saying, right, I want the Europa League. I want a good run in that, and I want 4th. That's progression to me. If you know what I mean. I wouldn't be asked about the FA Cup or the League Cup, but I get why you want it. The FA Cup's big for Spurs, always has been. You know, back in the day was our dealist and people like that. You know, even I remember all that. So I get it, but I try to look at it and say, as a fan, the most enjoyable moments I ever got was going to Seville, you know, and getting to the final there. You know, playing in Europe in a nice hot country in a final is second to none. It's better than Wembley. It's better than going to Hampden for a cup final. You know, so I think that he's going to have to rotate, and you can't rotate it if you want to get in the top 4. And I agree there. It's totally. You know, he hasn't got the squad. You've all answered the same question, so you all know it. It's just accepting it is what you've got to do. You know, we don't have the squad to play in the FA Cup, the Europa League, the Premiership, and the League Cup. You don't have the squad. So what does Ange do? He's not going to play to the masses and keep you happy. He's going to play what he thinks will win him what he needs. And I think what he needs is a good run in the Europa League to at least the final and getting into the top 4. And to me, that would be a fucking pretty brilliant season, and every Spurs fan will be bouncing. if they get to go to a European final, you know, and go into a nice. Where is it this year? Is it? I think
Bilbao.
Bilbao. Wow, that'd be brilliant. Imagine a day out in Bilbao. Fuck, you'd be out there for a week. You know what I mean? So that's my opinion.
I thought you were very balanced normally. You're making us dream now.
Well, it's just I'm just saying that it's probably easier for you to win the Europa League than it is to win in England.
I think some of the fans, that they would have their priority in perhaps winning a trophy in the Europa League, but I think the club will much prefer to finish or try to finish in the top 4. It's all about league competition, because we've seen this before under certain different managers. When we played in the Europa League, even under Pochettino, he was always worried about playing certain players in the Europa League because we were playing an important league game on a Sunday.
Yeah, I think sometimes that you can get momentum from playing in the Europa League, you know, and beating teams, you know, because it's not really the same level as the English Premiership, a lot of it. You know, I mean, if you look at Celtic and Rangers, we're Europa League teams. We're not Champions League teams. We've just not got the squad or the ability. I mean, we've got probably one of the best draws we've ever had in the Champions League. I'm quite confident that we'll probably get through. And because we've not got that harder group. You know, I mean, we've got Villa. They're probably one of the hardest teams we've got. I know we've got the 2 German sides, but we've got Dortmund and Leipzig, but they've got to come to Celtic Park, man. You know?
Yeah.
So, well, we're at Dortmund, but we've got Leipzig at home. So if I was picking when I was looking at the draw, I was thinking I want Leipzig at home, you know, because they were the easiest top 1 team in my view. You know, that's who we got. You know, Dortmund, they were below Leipzig, you know. So I look at that and I think, well, okay, we've got them over there, so that's not going to be easy. But that's how you look at the Europa League. You know, you look at it from the point of view, right, well, who have we got to come up against? You know, because you're only probably going to have 3 or 4 teams at Tottenham's level in the Europa League. If you know what I mean. Whereas you've got teams in the English Premiership that are way above your level at the moment.
We don't take anything for granted, especially in European competition, Ali.
Yeah, you've got to get locking cups. You need to be lucky.
It was only a couple of years ago the Dynamo Zagreb manager was actually in prison and they knocked us out. That's how it can go sometimes. I'm trying to be positive.
Who was in charge then?
Jose Mourinho.
Okay then. There you go. You know,
Craig,
defensive.
Craig, let's come to you. There's a long question and a comment here. It's a bit of a rant from Klinsmann's mullet. Madison has been mid since last season. Number 2, Kulusevski is a fouled winger. Number 3, Werner is a joke. Number 4, Richie should have been sold. Number 5, Ben Davies at the club for 10 years, not good enough. Number 6, Ryan Mason as assistant manager. Number 6, youngsters brought in, except 6th or 7th. Number 7, Ange has been sussed out. I am writing the season off, says Klinsmann's mullet. Can you believe this attitude of some of the fans just 3 games in? I know we talk about negativity. I know that some people have said that, you know, some shows we're happy clappers, some shows we can be super negative. I think we're somewhere in the middle. We discuss everything on this show, as we said yesterday. But a number of points there. Some people are very unhappy.
Yeah, I'm not taking anything serious with a name like Klinsmann's mullet.
No, that's it. I mean,
I'm just not taking it seriously. He's an Arsenal fan, that.
he's there's a lot of points there, as Ali says, and I think a bit of an overreaction. But I get it that the fans we're all frustrated and disappointed at the way we started the season, because we thought easily 7 points, hopefully 9, and of course we didn't. That's not the way it's gone. I think there is overreaction. I'm prone to it myself. I think we all are, but we do need to look at the bigger picture. It is annoying me. It actually says it's almost like petulant kids. Some people on X, like they're just throwing their teddy in the corner. I get it. I do get it, because we all have moments, but when you look at what we're trying to build, I think we have to at least wait till the end of September to see where we are. You know, we'd have had the Arsenal game by then. We'd have had the Coventry game by then. Hopefully, we'll have players back from injury by then. Hopefully, we'll get through the international break without many injuries. Good news for me that Van der Ven's out. He pulled out of the Dutch squad. He can just rest and recuperate at the training ground, and hopefully have him back fully fit for the North London derby. And same with Solanke. Hopefully, we'll go into that fully strength team. Bit too early for meltdowns. Again, with you on that. I've seen them all over X today, calling for Ange's head, calling for this, that, and the other. I don't really know what to say on it. I know patience is not a word that comes easy, but we've got to have a bit of patience here and trust the process. That's all we can do. Because what do you do if you get rid of Ange Postecoglou? Back to square one.
I think as well, in the Premiership, teams go on runs. You know, like I said to you, in our first 7 games, we lost 4 and we won the league. I know it's easier up there, but, you know, he went on a run then. It was just ridiculous. You know, and that was just the team just gelled. You know, Brendan Rodgers had similar last year until he brought James Forrest and one player came in and made all the difference to the dynamic of our.
Greg, I think we've lost Ali again. We're getting back in a couple of seconds. Spurs CC writes here, Chris, any chance of a reply to my email about supporting Mickey Hazard's charity? Haven't actually received an email from you, and I do reply to every single one. So please do email me at tottenhamfanchris@gmail.com. Craig, let's come to you because LK writes here, so happy we got Odebear and Werner instead of Neto and Eze. It will really help us to be competitive. I think that is a very sarcastic comment. It's got to be anyway. Dorito says we should have got Eze. Alex said we don't have the forward quality to be more clinical. Jay says we just don't have the quality to play this way. I think it was the same last year. Paul writes, and I do completely get Paul's comment here because I've said this a couple of times myself on previous podcasts. We don't move the ball quick enough. We take an extra touch. No one in the 6-yard box with intent. I think we mentioned this a good few times, actually, even in pre-season, where we seem to just want to walk the ball in. I know we certainly spoke about it after the Leicester game. That is a little bit frustrating, isn't it? How does Ange Postecoglou change that with certain players?
It's all down on the training pitch, isn't it? And keep working through it. It is frustrating with the seeming to want to walk it in. I want to see us shoot from range. I mean, Porro he's prone to a few shots from range. He had a couple yesterday, so perhaps that is changing. But the slow build-up, that's not what Ange is about. I've heard him screaming, move the ball quick, move the ball quick. You know, and that says to me they're not doing what he's asking them to do and what they're trained to do. So, and that all comes down to, I get it, that what is the manager supposed to do? He's telling his players to do something and they're not doing it. Does that mean that the players that we have are not good enough, or they're just not capable of receiving instructions? Could be both. The number one thing for me is having. I really want to see Solanke have a good run in the team where he's injury free. I think it's important for a striker to get that first goal, especially when they move to a new club, and then see where we can go with that. Because we said yesterday when we did the pod, he would have buried a few of those, I'm sure, and we would have been in a much better position. So yeah, but it's all working on the training pitch again, and making the players, drill it into them, getting that muscle memory about where they got to be and what they got to do. And Maddison needs to start doing what we saw in the first 10 games last season. I think he's been better, but he's still not. I haven't seen him put any through any pinpoint crosses. I thought he had a half decent game against Leicester and then drifted out of it a bit. He should be the linchpin. He should be the one where everything's coming through, and it's not quite happening still. So that's a bit frustrating.
Let's take a comment here from Norman Gilbert. And Craig, I'll come to you very quickly on this one, and then we'll ask Ali the same. Same issues as last year. Chance after chance wasted. Can't continue to dominate play and not put them away. So frustrating to watch. Same issues as last year. When you compare last season with the 3 games that you've seen so far in the Premier League that Spurs have played this season, what would you say, Craig? Is it the same? Or have we seen improvements? Because I think it's pretty fair to say that Newcastle game, I think parts of the game I thought we played really well, moved the ball really quickly. It was very similar to the start of last season. But I do get the point that a lot of people are saying that extra touch in the final third can be very frustrating.
I've seen tiny changes and improvements since the back end of last season. Passages of play, speed of play, but like you say, on the whole, the results don't. The results are very similar, aren't they? Actually, to the back end of last season, and it's a results business. But I've seen some encouraging signs, just not enough. But look, we have been unlucky with injuries. The 3 games in, we were incredibly unlucky going to a very difficult place where we struggled for the last 2 or 3 seasons up in Newcastle, and we haven't gone there. We have a couple of key players. And it's just not ideal, and there was a lot against us again. And I've said before, we're due a bit of luck. I don't think we've had much luck, and we didn't get any luck yesterday. That Odegaard chance we spoke earlier, Chris. I don't think we covered it. He should have gone with his head, 100%, and he went with his knee and it ballooned over. And it's just little decisions like that in key moments that. Every player, they just need to sharpen their game, I think.
Ali, let's come to you. Scott J writes here, and thanks so much for your comments, Scott. I notice your comments come up all the time, so thanks so much for all of your support of the channel. There is improvement. We have dominated the 3 games, just need to put it to bed. And Mark on X writes here, better at defending set pieces. I completely agree, and I don't think we've spoken about that enough, actually. Ali, what have you noticed the huge differences between the 3 games this season that Spurs have played and under Ange last year?
I think it comes down to decision making on the pitch. It's game management. I mean, people don't talk enough about game management. A coach and a manager can only do so much on the training pitch. When you're out on the actual pitch, it's dealing with the pressure of the game itself, and then dealing with the challenges that the opposition gives you in every minute of that game. Newcastle don't just do that at home to Spurs; they do it to every team. And that's how they get results. So, to me, it was a hard stadium to go to. I go back to the Leicester game. That was, you could see the Leicester game as being the blip. I don't think yesterday was the blip or the weekend was the blip. I think that was more, like Craig says, he didn't really get the luck, and players didn't make the right decisions at the right time. I mean, that defending was, none of them were, it wasn't a cohesive unit. That's probably the best way to put it. And you can see that by one guy going forward and 3 trying to go back. You're either going to do one or 2 things. You're going to try and get them offside, or you've got to make sure you're goal side of them, and that's next to them. So they've got to get past you, not 5 yards away from them. So to me, that's a lack of, the players, because they're watching what's going on in front of them, they're watching that and not where they need to be positionally. That's how I think it goes. So it comes down to game management. I don't think that can be. That's not something you really coach. That's coached on the day or through the week on positions and things like that. And they just didn't do it. Ange didn't coach them to do what they did to lose that goal. That wasn't coaching. That was bad management in game management by the players themselves. That wasn't the coach that said, I know what a good idea will be. If you know what I mean? So to me, it's the players sometimes, and you hear Roy Keane say a lot, the players need to take ownership sometimes of their own play, because they get paid a lot of money and a lot of expectation on them. But, they are good enough. We've said they're good enough. You know, your team is good enough to not make those basic mistakes. You know, that's the type of stuff that you might expect in the Championship. You know, it shouldn't be happening in the Premiership. So, to me, you can say all you like about Ange, but I think the players need to. Only the players can change that now, because Ange didn't coach them to do that. He didn't say, right, look, this is how you defend, boys. You know, he'd have told them, you know, and in the midfield, out of position, that's why the ball came through in the first place. So it wasn't just the defenders, and Craig said it earlier, it wasn't just the defenders that caused that goal. You know, the midfielders, the press, everything went wrong. So there was 3 or 4 things went wrong for that to actually happen. You know, so Ange didn't coach them to do 3 or 4 things wrong. You know, he'd have had their positionings in those situations and they would know it. They just didn't do it. So that's my opinion on it. But I think they're playing better. I think that there's an overreaction at the moment. I still think there's all to play for in the league. Not going to win the league, but you don't expect to if you don't have the windows that you need. But there has to be progression this year, and Ange will know that.
Ali, happy-go-lucky writes here, Ange looks massively depressed.
Yeah, because his players aren't doing what they're being coached, is my opinion. You know, he'll never say it because he doesn't slate his players. But, you know, you used to see him at Celtic, you know, a player, Mickey Johnson used to frustrate him, and other players. And his head just drops and he just thinks, what have I got to do to get it into their head? You know, it's like teaching kids. And it's almost like he's got that disappointment of his kids because they've let him down. And that's what happened. And that's what happens on these games, because he knows that momentum's what he needs. You know, he needed a good start to the season. He knew he had 3 reasonably easy, not easy, but 3 points worth of games. You know, so he'll be massively disappointed. And it's his job now. I think Sonny isn't doing very well at the moment. He seems to be a bit disjointed. I don't know if it's his age, if he can't make the runs that he used to, but he's the one thing that in an Ange team, your wingers need to be, you know, getting beyond, and they don't seem to be doing that enough. Maybe he's missing Harry Kane, I don't know.
Do you know what? I love Heung-min Son, one of my favourite all-time Spurs players. I think his pressing this season has been absolutely fantastic. I just think that sometimes, you know, certainly in these 3 games that he's played for Spurs this season so far, he is more interested in trying to set up his teammates rather than actually having a shot himself. And I think that is an issue. We've seen him so often, you know, in recent years, cutting in and having that shot. And now I just feel like he looks for teammates to try and set up to score the perfect goal. And I think that he needs to shoot a lot more. Craig, go on.
I think it's because he's the captain. I think he's trying to be the father figure of the team. He's trying to, you know, play for them rather than play for himself like he used to. And I think drop him from being the captain. Not as a slate to him. Say, look, you just go back to doing your job, mate. You know, I always prefer my midfielder, central midfielders being your captain.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Another comment here. Our best finisher should be more selfish. 100%. Craig, would you agree?
100%.
Yeah, he is our best finisher. And you're right, actually, Chris. I hadn't even thought of that. He's not been cutting in from the left wing, has he, and having a shot. I hadn't really noticed that, but now I come to mention it, he's obviously playing the way that he's told to play now, isn't he? When he's on the left, he's get it down and get a cross in. So you probably won't see him scoring as many goals, which is ironic because he's probably the best finisher at the club. Obviously, we haven't seen enough of Solanke to make that call for this season. And we'll obviously know all about that at the end of the season. But
I find it strange that he's been coached not to come inside, because both wingers at Celtic were always coached to come inside. And it was your left and right back that went outside. A lot of the time at Celtic, that's how it was. So I'd be surprised if he's been coached that. That sounds more like a choice thing to me, and it's a cop-out. Honestly, I don't think he's been coached that at all. Why would you coach something out of somebody that's their natural thing that is what makes them a great player? You just wouldn't do it. So to me, something's going on in his head where he's deciding to do these things, I think.
Craig, let's come back to you. William Webb writes here, we will beat Arsenal and United, and those negative lot will change their attitude. In Ange we trust. There are still a lot of positive Spurs fans out there. And as we've mentioned already, we really want this to work for Ange Postecoglou, want it to work for Tottenham Hotspur. The massive change, the rebuild, the amount of players that have gone out the door, the players that have come in the door. This is going to take time, obviously. Patience is probably needed for the manager. Multiple transfer windows, as Ali said. I've asked you about what you think of the negative attitude from the fan base. What do you think of the positive attitude?
Oh, I love the positive attitude. I do. I'm usually one of those, you call me a happy clapper if you want, but I do try and be positive as much as I can, but I also try to be a realist as well. I would love it if we beat Arsenal, beat United. I think United are probably a worse team than us, to be honest with you, at the moment. It's a basket case of a club. I wouldn't even put us in the same. Well, I suppose they are fighting for the same things we are. Trying to get into the Champions League places. Of course, Gary Neville seems to think that United will still get fourth. I don't think many other people outside United probably think the same. But I love the positivity. And can you imagine what a lift it would give the fan base if we were to somehow find a way to beat Arsenal in the first game back and then smash Coventry in the cup? I think everybody would be back on side and the world would be a better place. But we know it doesn't go like that, so we can but hope, of course. But it's 11-11, all those cliches. So let's hope we can smash Arsenal after the international break. 100%.
There's only one thing that will change the attitudes of people, and and that's winning games of football. To be honest,
absolutely.
We need to go on a run. We need to get some positivity back. Sometimes the best teams raise the fan base, and that's what needs to happen here. Is that the players need to take responsibility on the pitch and give the fans something to shout for, because you can't just expect fans to constantly be turning up and getting beat and expect them to be motivated every game. So to me, they need to get some wins under the belt, some good look, they've had good performances. We've all said that. It's the wins they need to start getting to go with the performances. And I believe that Ange is massive on, he looks at the performance before the result. So I know people will say, oh, that's why we're not getting the results we should. It's not. He's right. If the performances are there, it's like a process. And he always says, trust the process. And he's right, because in any job you do, any business you do, if you get the process right and you're doing it right more constantly and more often, then you're going to win more than you lose. So I think you've got to trust the process, like he says, because it's not going to change. That's going to be his process. That's how he's going to deal with it. That's how he's going to get his players to deal with it. He's going to get everyone in the club saying, right, we go out next, we're positive, we're going to have a go at Arsenal. And then immaterial result, the performance will matter, and then he'll go to the next game and he'll do exactly the same again, and that'll just keep going and keep going and keep going. And that's where he gets success. So who are we to say, change your ways? If it works for you, then, I just think he's got a lot going against him, but at the end of the day, I think he's still got a good enough side to come forth. He just needs to maybe get a bit of luck in one of the games against Arsenal, for instance, just getting a bit of luck there, because I think to beat them, you might need a bit of luck. And
Ali, let's stay with you. There's a comment here. We're only 3 games in. Stay negative, and that could have a bad knock-on effect on the players. Menace 316 says here, bring back Moussa Dembele. No one ran the midfield like him. We've never replaced him, Chris. I completely agree. Fantastic player. Really did miss him when he went. And Colin Turner writes here, Brennan Johnson needs to look up before putting the ball in. Now, I mentioned this training session that Ryan Mason was taking about the wingers whipping the balls in, knowing the geography of the pitch, his words, and whipping those balls into the 6-yard box and knowing that the striker is there to finish off. Now, Ali, Brennan Johnson, it's fair to say that he has received a lot of criticism from a lot of Tottenham Hotspur fans, certainly last year since signing from Nottingham Forest. He was on the sub bench on Sunday against Newcastle, came on at half time, did make a difference in the game. It is fair to say, made a difference in the match. Put in one ball in particular right at the end of the game, no one there. What have you made of Brennan Johnson in a Spurs shirt? Do you think Ange Postecoglou can get the very best out of Brennan Johnson? Because Craig Bellamy, of course, now Wales manager, come out and said the other day, he is an elite player. He then repeated himself, he is elite. Do you think that we are going to see that elite version of Brennan Johnson?
Yeah, and look, people need to help him as well. He came from Nottingham Forest. The other players about him, like I was saying before, there's no continuity there with the number 6 managing the game. The game management comes from a lot of it. So, people like him, even Maddison, I think at times, needs somebody there to boss the stuff. He needs to be free. Sonny needs to be free. These players are great players that need to be free to do their job. And I think sometimes they're all taking too much responsibility instead of just going and doing what they need to do and what they're good at, if you understand what I mean. And I think when things are going against you, like it is just now, then they feel that pressure of, I can't make a mistake. And then when you've got players that are afraid of making a pass or instant reactions, what they're good at, then that becomes a problem. So you see loads of players putting balls into the box, mate, with nobody there. It's one of the hardest things to do is get a ball to a player that's, at pace and somebody running onto it. It's just a hard thing to do. It's not, elite players mess that up all the time. You see it happening at all the top level clubs. So I wouldn't be concerned about the fact he's put a ball in the right place and there wasn't a player there. The problem is the player wasn't there. A lot of the time at Celtic, you would have 2 or 3 midfielders running at that, let alone a striker. So again, that's game management. There's nobody reacting to the boy. Now, if he's too fast for them, then that means that they're too slow for the Spurs team. That's how I see it, or for that type of play. So, other players, there shouldn't have just been one person coming in on that. And that's my view on it, is that I didn't see the whole thing, so I can't really say that as a fact. But my view of whenever the wingers got the ball out and they were bringing it in and putting it into the box, there was always plenty of people running into it. And if that's not happening at Tottenham, then that's another part of the game management they're not doing right, mate. They're not anticipating it. And, they are elite players, so they need to be doing that.
Yeah, there's a comment here. Odebear would have had 2 tap-ins if he'd have made the back post run yesterday. And another comment here, Johnson doesn't have the killer instinct you need for Ange ball. You can't coach that. Thoughts on those ones, Craig?
Yeah, about Johnson. I mean, I think he does get a lot of stick. He absolutely gets a lot of stick, Johnson. But I think he came on and made a really big impact in the game yesterday. And his stats bear that out as well. For even last season, the amount of goals scored from his crosses, I think he's one of the wingers that actually does what he's told to do. It's not his fault. I've said this before. It's not his fault if players aren't in position. And Sonny's not got that natural instinct of a number 9 to do that job, so he's not going to take up those natural positions in the 6-yard box all the time without thinking of it, that muscle memory I was speaking of. And Odebear is just new to the system. He's only been here two or 3 weeks, so you can't expect him to learn the system and do it naturally that quickly. It will come. It will come. Johnson comes in for a lot of stick that I don't think a lot of it's justified. He comes with a big price tag, so you've got to take that on your shoulders. If he'd come for 10 million, people wouldn't be expecting as much. But it's not his fault. The price is not his fault. That's what the club decided to pay. So, he's just got to keep plugging away, keep doing what he's told to do. You could see, I actually watched his face when he put in a couple of low balls in the really good areas, and you could see he was frustrated himself that nobody's on the end of it, because he'd done his job, he'd done what he was told to do, and it was the players on the other end didn't. So I felt a bit for Brennan Johnson yesterday. He did change the game. He didn't obviously score the goal. It was an own goal in the end, but he was there. to pick up the pieces from the shot. So he had a good game, and I'm sure I just don't want to see the fan base completely get on players' backs. We've got a habit of doing that with young players sometimes. Not necessarily young players, but players that come with big price tags, like Brennan Johnson. He doesn't need it. We need to get behind these players because I've seen worse at Spurs. I know you have, Chris, as well. You know, he's I wouldn't say he was an elite player. I don't really agree with Craig Bellamy there, but he's certainly not the worst. And I think we need to trust Ange's belief in him.
I think he maybe lacks a bit of belief himself because of where he's come from. And like you say, I don't think he was worth the money you paid. I don't think he was that level when you bought him. I think he could become that kind of level player. I think he's one of what we would class one of the project players, really. You know, he's somebody that you would bring in expecting to make him better. And I just think, unfortunately, that Spurs have struggled since probably certainly early part of the year, and I think that'll impact him. You know, he's not the type of player that's going to come in and change that. Maddison's similar. You know, that's why, again, to me, it's the tempo of the guy at number 6. You know, he's the one that needs to raise everyone and get them going. So I just feel that there's a missing link there somewhere at the moment, that if he can fix that, then they'll start motoring. You know, because some of the play, as you've all seen, and it's just then the runs into them. And Solanke might just be that wee link that comes in there. Somebody else, or whoever, it might be the one that's all of a sudden makes these runs that opens it up for Sonny to come inside and things like that. You know, but some of the other players need to help Sonny as well, because, you know, it takes two to make the space and then allow that player to run. Because if you're always just one against one, then it comes down to how fast you can get past people. And there's a lot of pace at the back in the Premiership, so it's hard to get by folk. So you need to pass through the line. So I think he's a good player, mate. I agree with you. I don't think he's at elite just now, but I think he has all the trademarks of the ability to get there. But I think he's going to need help doing it.
We'll take this last one from Grant, and Grant is a very positive Spurs fan. I know Grant. Grant, thanks so much for all of your support on the channel, by the way. Too many prospects that may not make it. Far too much expectation on young shoulders. Now, this was my point that I've been making for the last couple of weeks, Ali, that I feel that Spurs should have brought in a couple more experienced players in the transfer window, because if we do have injuries to key players, some of these youngsters, particularly Bergvall, Archie Gray, with huge potential, and some of the development players that have come from the under-21s, they will have a lot of pressure on their shoulders. And also, can I ask you, when Ange Postecoglou was at Celtic, how did he integrate the youngsters and the development players into the squad? Did he use the youth players a lot in the 2 years that he was at Celtic?
Yeah, he did and didn't. He made players better. But I would suggest that when things are going to be going wrong, it's people like Brennan Johnson with a high price tag on his head. Maddison doesn't seem to cope that well with that type of pressure either, you know, because these guys aren't changing the games where you're struggling in now. So they're unlikely to do it going forward. I would suggest that some of the young players will probably play with a bit less fear because there's no expectation on them. So I don't suppose I'd be as worried about those players. I just worry that even at this moment in time, you don't have anyone that, even the older players that are there, I don't see any of them stepping up to the mark when they need to. And that would be my biggest concern with your team just now, is that there's nobody putting their foot in the ball and saying, right, I'm bossing this. You know, that's my worry about Tottenham, is that you don't see that in their identity where you've got a player that can do that. You know, and that's a big worry, because the best teams have that. And you know, you look at 2 Spanish guys in the Euros, you know, the wingers. I mean, and the guys that were playing for Germany, I mean, they're 16-year-old and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, if they're struggling at pressure, they're in the wrong game. You know, I think that if you're good enough, you're old enough. And some of these young boys you've got, I do think are good. If it was me and I was Ange just now, I'd put that young striker on, to be honest with you, because he looks pretty good. And if he can score, if he's got that instinct, then he's going to get loads of chances. Just give him a shot, you know, because the other players aren't doing it. and that's just my view.
I feel like it's going to be a big year and a big season for James Maddison as well, Ali.
Yeah, he needs to step up, mate. I've never thought. I thought he's always been overrated. Just my opinion. Even before he went to Spurs, I thought he's a decent player. I didn't think he was anything special. Like I say, I look at players from a point of view that they can boss a game, things like that. You know, I don't see what he does. I think he's a decent player, but I don't think he's Spurs quality. That's my opinion. I don't think Spurs need something more than that to go to the next level. Would Maddison get into any of your top 3 teams? You know, Maddison wouldn't get a game for any of them. So why should he be so highly thought of? You know, because he's not changing the games. Like you said, Leicester, in and out of the game, he slowed the play down too much for me. He was coming back too far out of position. And, you know, that then puts other people out of position. So I just don't... I've never rated the guy that highly, mate. That's just my opinion. I think he's a decent player, but I've never seen him as, you know, when he was getting picked for England and stuff, I'm thinking, what? You know, there's better players than him out there. So I just think that, yeah, you know, Brennan Johnson, he's another one. You know, he's a good player, but he's going to need help. So, and I need someone in that midfield that can help all these boys along, you know, and make sure the shape works and everything. You know, so it's game management to me, and I just don't think Maddison's too much for himself. You know, it's what he does with the ball, when he's got it. You know, I don't think he sometimes doesn't pass it quick enough. You know, people are making runs, he's not putting it through that he should be. I've seen loads of times where I thought he's tidy on the ball, but to be what he is in that team, a leader of that team, he needs to be more than tidy on the ball, mate.
Yeah, I felt that he had a fantastic opening 45 minutes against Leicester, but we need to see that on a more consistent, more consistently throughout the season. You know, he started his Spurs career so well in those opening 10 games, and then of course got the injury. But we need to see a lot more of him.
Yeah, if he plays like that, and yeah, totally different. He was a different player for that 10 games, even. It's probably the best I've seen him play in any of the games I've seen him play. So yeah, I just don't think if he can get back to that and do it consistently, fine. But I hope he does, because you can see he's got it. It just needs to be, like you say, consistent, and he needs to be more dominant. You know, he needs to be demanding more rather than just, you know, he seems to be on the periphery a bit, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like just waiting for it to happen rather than making it happen. And I think that's what he needs to change, is that he needs to be the one that says, right, I'm going to take this game by the grip and I'm going to deal with shit. So,
Ali, I absolutely love having opposition fans and non-Spurs fans on here, because sometimes you guys tell us some stuff that we don't want to hear. And, you know, you're very upfront and frank with us. The last question I want to ask is, how are you feeling ahead of the North London derby, Spurs-Arsenal? Who do you think will win? How do you think this will go? And I want you to be honest.
Well, you're at home. And look, Ange doesn't care who he's playing, mate. And it might be the spark that sets off your season. I'll put it this way. I don't think Arsenal will be looking forward, after drawing with Brighton, coming to play you guys. It's the last thing he needs, you know. At the same time, Tottenham their big players need to step up, mate. If your big players step up, then it's like anything.
Yep.
You know, they're going to miss Rice. They'll definitely miss him, because he has made the difference to them to be league challengers. You know, Odegaard hasn't been as good a player this last 6 months, I don't think, either. And he's a great player, but I don't think he's been as dominant this last wee while. I don't know why. But still a good player, obviously. He still does dominate some of the games, but yeah. Oh, put me on the spot, man. I'm can I say I don't think you'll get beat? Is that good enough?
That's good enough. That's good enough. Yes.
Because I don't think you'll get beat. And I think if the top players step up, and Son especially, and gets into his rhythm, then I think there'll be plenty of space for you to create against them. And I don't think they're as great at the back as I think you could get space in the back with them.
Ali, as per usual, you've been a fantastic guest, so thank you so much for coming back. You're always very welcome. I know you're not on social media, but what are you up to at the moment? And can people find you anywhere if they want to get in touch?
No, mate, I'm just working away. I'm away in a hotel at the moment. I'm down Liverpool way at the moment. So, yeah. But if they get in touch, I'll keep watching your podcast, and I'll say hi to everyone.
Thank you so much. And Craig, thank you so much to you, because you persuaded me to do this podcast today. This wasn't planned.
Yeah.
Can I tell everyone what you said? It was like everyone's on a super negative, and we need to calm people down and get Ali on. He'll give his very balanced views. I think it's worked for me tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Ali is the voice of reason, because it's a great. I totally agree with what you said. It's great to have an outsider's point of view. Some viewers experienced the Ange sort of roller coaster as well at Celtic. Different club, different setup, everything different, but it's still football, isn't it? So you know what his philosophy is all about, and yeah, it certainly calmed me down a bit. I must admit, I've been wound up most of the day. So tomorrow's another day. Arsenal's another team. We got to play, so it's made me feel a bit better about the game.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Klopp had a season where he went down to 67 points and stuff. So it is a hard league. You're building something, and I would rather it be built with him than have someone come in and just accept mediocrity. And that's it.
Well, Ali, thank you so much. We look forward to having you on the show again soon. Craig, I'm sure you'll be back with me very, very soon. So thanks both of you, and thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and thanks for all of your tremendous support. On Sunday, we reached 125,000 subscribers, which we've gone from talking about panels to, of course, Ange Ball. So 7 years in on YouTube, still going very strong. Thank you so much for all of your support, and thank you for listening on various audio platforms as well. And we will see you on the next one. Come on, you Spurs.
Since I'm on your time.